and I wanted to do it sooner, but I was doing something I call now following the divine will. Um, I had got sick, not too sick, but I had got a little sick, and then after that, I a funny little synchronicity coincidence. I ordered the Quran, and it came to me from Amazon, and then shortly after, or maybe even the same day, I got it. Or what? I don't think it was. It was maybe like a day after or two. I accidentally shaved my mustache, and I felt a little too embarrassed to do the live at that point. Had to let it grow back a little bit, back to good health. So who knows? Maybe now is the perfect time to do this. But today I wanted to get into um, more of in depth on what I last talked about, the left hand path and the right hand path, and also Eastern philosophy, which tends to be more of a no path or a middle path sometimes. But yeah, so the differences between the left hand path and the right hand path. The left hand path, as I stated before, is more about the self and self transformation and darkness, Satanism. It usually incorporates all those things, but can also include other cultures and spirits from other pantheons, as long as it's more usually dark or more self-centered or more about manipulating reality to get what you want. And there's much more to it, a lot of deeper things that take whole books to really fully grasp the concept. And even beyond reading the books, rituals, and once you're reading the books, you get what's called gnosis, which is an understanding that is not really not something you could really read or learn. It's more from experience. But there's also gnosis within the right hand path too. And the right hand path, which I talked about in my last live, is more religious or based around religions, God, the light, and also supposed to be more for being humble and serving the collective. But both sides can have their yin and yang to it. There's a lot of religious people that are bad and self-serving, and there's a lot of satanic people that don't even really care about themselves, and like they kind of desire to love other people and things like that, but they see religious people as self-serving and cruel and things like that, which it's all valid. And part of why I wanted to do this video is to clear up confusion on both sides, and yeah, pretty much talk about the importance of differentiating the two if one decides to get into the occult and dabble in both paths. Because sometimes people will, let's say, try to be religious, Christian, or whatever the case may be, and try to be a good person, yet they don't really understand the path that they're walking fully and all the deeper meanings to really be that good person. Or somebody might think think they're transforming themselves, being on the left-hand path. Whole time they're just worshiping Lucifer or Satan or whatever spirit the same way you would uh, the Christian God or whatever. A lot of people, a lot of the time, scramble the two up. So, for this live, for the last one, I didn't do notes, but this one did a whole little page. And also, as I said, I wanted to talk about Eastern philosophy a little bit. Sometimes, even besides those two paths, sometimes people will claim Eastern philosophy, and the whole time it's kind of a little bit of escapism because they'll misunderstand the two and then use Eastern philosophy as an excuse, like, oh, I don't really care about the labels, or um, I don't have to understand the external, I don't have to read books, I don't have to understand this person or that person because it's all within me and I don't need to have ego and this and that. But then they'll have ego thinking that they know about the two things, which doesn't really make sense and is a little contradictory. The same way people on either path can be contradictory. But let's go further to clear up the confusion. So an example I thought of was Bobby Hemmett and Brother Panic. Not that they fall in those confusions, they are actually knowledgeable on what they talk about, but people who watch them tend to get their message uh, misconstrued or scramble it up. So from my observation and understanding, when they talk about Satanism and the left-hand path, some people think that what they're talking about is just going beyond religion and then being spiritual, and then that's Satanism. But that's not all they're saying. They're also saying to tap into the shadow self, which is also the primal self, not just the spiritual self, which the shadow self and the primal self is much different than the spiritual self. The primal has to do with embracing power, embracing physical strength, embracing intercourse, intimacy. Not sure how explicit I could be on here, but yeah. And things of that nature, and even manipulation for power and seduction, things like that, which that's not necessarily spiritual or light. I would say something that I've came to a conclusion of myself, a little bit of gnosis, is that the spirit is our spiritual energy that has to do with God and light and all that, and then the soul is our individual, it relates to our individual purpose and the shadow self a little bit. And that's just a piece of gnosis I've obtained from dabbling in the two paths. I could be right, it could be wrong. There's a lot of scrambling up of that all throughout history and ancient times, and even within the occult realms between practitioners, but that's my understanding of it. And then also sometimes why some people don't like Satanism or vampires or a lot of let's say European or uh, white associated things. Let's say Chinese or black or Hispanic person, they might have a little bit of resistance to these things. But the lecturers, or however you want to call them, that I mentioned, they embrace these things because it didn't start with Europeans solely. It started in Egypt and Africa and even South America, the Caribbean, Native Americans. Every culture had their Satanism, left hand path, vampires, just under different labels. And another point I wanted to say is that if you claim Eastern philosophy, it's contradictory to say, oh, I don't like labels and this and that 1 second, but then when it comes to race, then it's a problem. But that doesn't really make sense. If you're gonna be about no labels and no ego, it should apply to race too and cultures, because at the end of the day, every culture has a left and right hand path, and every culture has demons, angels, all that stuff. So I'm Cuban, Puerto Rican, and Dominican, but I like all cultures really. I don't even dabble in my own, which would be Santeria and Palo Mayombe and different things like that. I like I like Eastern philosophy and the left hand path and the right hand path. And from my Eastern philosophy perspective, I don't discriminate or hate um, a white thing or a black thing or a Jewish thing. Like, I like every culture. It doesn't make sense to claim Eastern philosophy and then hate on certain cultures. And um, just because something is not the original source doesn't mean it's not true. For example, Christianity, or let's say a good example, Satan is not the original name of the adversarial spirit, and neither is Lilith for the woman adversarial spirit. For example, I believe the origins of Lilith goes back to Mesopotamia, the spirit Lily too, and there's many instances of this happening. For example, Yahweh, the Christian God, wasn't always a monotheistic God. It was that God was worshipped alongside other gods before, El and Baal. I'm not 100% too knowledgeable on that, but pretty much my point is that even though something is not the original source, doesn't mean it's invalid, because at the end of the day, egregores form and begin to crystallize and have their own power. For example, even Christianity itself, many people say, is taken from other places like Egypt, and the similarities with Horus, and there's many similarities that overlap with other cultures. And even Christianity itself is taken from Judaism, and Islam is taken from both of those and made into its own thing. And each thing, just because it's not the original source, doesn't mean it doesn't have truth to it. They all have truth to it, and maybe some truths are evolved and are even more true, and maybe some there is falseness, but someone who really has no ego, the Eastern philosophy way, is not gonna pick at, oh, this race, this is not original. Regardless of how old or new something is, they're gonna have their effects and their truths. That's my perspective on it, and I feel like is a perspective that can help people stop with the confused perspectives I mentioned in the beginning. Um, Also, relating to what I just talked about people not believing the newer sources. For example, some people will take a spirit like Lilith or Lucifer and give it their own meaning because they believe that the white version is false. But at that point, you're kind of like disrespecting and not really showing the spirit the right respects in the right way. For example, look at it like this. Let's say um, you watching this, if you've got this far, let's say your your intimate preference, your orientation, uh, some let's say you're straight, and then somebody comes along and starts telling everybody like, oh, this guy is gay, or you're gay, and then somebody starts being like, oh, this guy's straight. You wouldn't like that. So it doesn't make sense for people just because they don't like the culture or where the spirit is actually like derived from in that name, in that moment. Yes, there's ancient origins, just like your name and who you are has ancient origins and lineages, but at the end of the day, we are who we are in this present moment. And I don't think it's necessarily right for practitioners to twist spirits' preferences and what they like too much. For example, some people discredit Lilith and try to give her different attributes than what she really is. For example, she, from my experience and research and gnosis, she's about embracing lust and the primal and self-love and feminism, dark femininity. But some people will try to say, oh, no, that's not really her true form because the Europeans scrambled it up, and she's really about love and light and just being a motherly light figure, when that's not the case. Yes, she can have her positive attributes, but at the same time, it wouldn't be right to work with her and act like she's about right hand path things when she's a left hand path spirit from dark Kabbalah, from the tree of death, clip off. The Klepothic energies are not the same as the tree of life energies and should not be uh, portrayed to be the same as the tree of life, in my opinion. But yeah, this is Sykoism, so this is my philosophy. If you don't like it, I don't know, go be polarized or something. But and another point, let's say you're getting into the left-hand path and you see that demons are not all Christians make them out to be. Right now I'm backing up the left-hand path a little bit, even though I said I'm more on the right-hand path lately, but I accept it all. And I also said that I see Taoism as kind of a foundation for my beliefs, which comes with accepting the two and trying to harmonize them and go with the flow in life. So this video is a little bit of balance to the last one, even though I'm not in the left-hand path, but I gotta back them up too. But yeah, pretty much what I was gonna say is, if you're getting into the left-hand path and you see demons are not all Christians make them out to be, a lot of them do have a lot of cool attributes and even light attributes. But if you are to misconstrue their attributes and start acting like they're only light, then that would be the same thing that Europeans or Christians, whatever you want to say, did to those spirits, just in the opposite way. For example, like Lilith, Lucifer, they all have their good attributes, but they were all demonized and made out to be the devil. And Satan and all that, they just call it the devil and demons and that they're bad. But the ancient, or the word where demon comes from, daemon, which is Greek, I believe, means a god. It doesn't mean a bad spirit. But Christians threw them all under one umbrella, which is the devil or demons. And to do it either way, I feel like is wrong. Respect spirits for who they are and work with them where they're at. Respect their frequency. And if you wanna claim to know a spirit, actually do your research. Don't just claim Eastern philosophy and portray your own meaning on it. Sup. And I already talked about a lot of the topic for this video: left-hand path, right-hand path, Eastern philosophy, and spirits and confusion, and clearing up some confusion. But as a last point, I wanted to say, which is some personal gnosis of mine, but I also touched on it a little bit, is that from my experience and gnosis is the left-hand path is about the primal and the shadow, and the right-hand path is for light, consciousness, and ego. And if someone wants to look more into what these things mean, I would recommend to look more into Carl Jung, or it's spelled Jung, but I've heard it's pronounced Jung, Carl Jung, or however you want to say it. But a lot of the shadow talk within the left-hand path actually comes from or is influenced by Jung, even though maybe it's been called other things in history or ancient times. But he popularized, or even I think made, the term the shadow, which goes back to the point I said, that just because something is new doesn't make it valid. It could, and also, like I said, words and language evolves. Maybe it could be more valid combined with what was before to just evolve us as humans into maybe how we were spiritually in ancient times, but we won't get there if we stay stuck and ignorant. But yeah, that's all for today. Hope y'all enjoyed the talk. Leave comments, let me know what y'all think, what y'all want me to talk about in future videos, and like and subscribe. And thank you if you stay tuned this far. But yeah, thank you. Peace.